Hey, welcome back to the show. So nobody ever questions when an athlete takes time off to recover from a physical injury, right? But there is less understanding, or it seems maybe some less tolerance, when an athlete steps aside for mental health reasons. I discussed this with author Wendy Tamis Robbins, who struggled with anxiety as a college athlete herself. She shares her journey in her book, The Box, an invitation to freedom from anxiety.
Wendy, your book is The Box, the invitation to freedom from anxiety. I accept your invitation. I am RSVPing now. It's a big topic, and especially as we watch the Olympics. And for you, as someone who has lived with anxiety since you were a child, how did you feel watching Simone Biles at the Olympics struggling?
I couldn't relate to it on that level. Obviously, I felt for her because I had it for so long. And I just thought it was such an act of pure courage. I mean, she had shown such courage before this, even coming to the Olympics after having been a survivor with the sexual assault and all of that. But this was just taking it to another level and, stepping aside in that way to preserve her own mental health. I thought it was just an amazing moment.
You have all these expectations on yourself. I think a lot of us do, but in hearing the word GOAT, as far as Simone Biles goes, greatest of all time, do you think that having that big pedestal that we all put her on contributed to her struggles?
I do. I think that it's similar with someone like Naomi Osaka, at such a young age obviously they've proven themselves in these areas in their respective sports, but it is just so much pressure to handle. And at such a young age, I describe it oftentimes as, like if you have this power surge, that's kind of the excitement that you get from, performing or right before a big event. But sometimes if there's too much, that circuit gets sort of broken, so to speak. And there's just, I think that can happen when the weight of the world is on you like this and under those bright lights. So I think that did contribute.
And you know all about this. I mean, you did track and field at Dartmouth. Can you talk about some of the pressures that you felt being a student athlete at an Ivy League school?
That was a big source of, that was like my first rock bottom was my sophomore year at Dartmouth when I was calling a suicide hotline. And that was a really difficult time because it was such a huge leap for someone coming from public school and going to an Ivy League. That was just the academic portion, as you're saying, was such an enormous weight to bear. And then the dedication, the amount of time for a varsity athlete is just, that sacrifice is huge. It's just, 3 hours a day that you're not in the library. So it was a real struggle for me to figure out that balance. But it was a really big source of anxiety for sure.
I don't know that a lot of people admit it. I know personally, I actually struggle with anxiety. At one point, I was diagnosed with panic disorder. Latest stats I've read is that 1 in 5 people struggle with it. 1 in 5. So anyone in a given room is struggling with anxiety. Why do you think a large amount of folks who are struggling with it don't get treated, aren't getting help?
I think the two biggest factors are shame. I think there's so much shame that still surrounds this issue that, which is why I wrote the book in part and why I'm, telling my story to remove that stigma around mental illness. And also the potential consequences. When I was struggling, people think about what if I say something and I lose my job or I lose custody of my child or I'm thrown off the team because it's not understood as much as physical injuries, right? And I've been so shocked. I mean, my book recently went to #1 on the Amazon bestseller list, and I would never have predicted something like that. But everyone I talk to about the book either struggles or knows someone, has a loved one who struggles. And it's just been this incredible reception and connection that I've had with so many people.
That is such good news to hear. And, I think there is a lot of hope in that because it seems like we've seen some of these high profile athletes buck that trend. Simone stood up and she said it. Like you mentioned, Naomi Osaka, Andrew Luck, they've all opened up about their mental health. Do you think that something different is changing culturally, especially with young people?
I certainly hope so. I think that these are huge moves in the right direction, that we're opening the conversation and giving people vocabulary, educating them, empowering them so that they can reach out, even if they're not struggling, and help those who are. We also need to work on the stigma so that athletes are comfortable getting those services and they don't feel like there will be, a stigma attached to it or the media will be all over them. I think that it's important that we give them that safe space, as we do in the physical injury area, or even just physical preservation, to preserve their mental health before an injury or an illness even starts.
Absolutely. Well, we thank you for your inspiration and education with your book. Wendy, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.